The Oahu Real Property Tax Advisory Commission, please come to order. We are.
Yes.
Let's see. Okay. Persons wishing to present oral testimony, if you have not already submitted your registration form to my commission aide, please do so now. Otherwise, please raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak at the time I call for additional speakers following the testimonies of registered speakers. Each speaker is limited to a 3-minute presentation on all items. Each speaker may testify for him or herself and may not speak on another's behalf. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, may be posted by the city clerk and available to the public on the city's Oahu Real Property Tax Advisory Commission website and DocuShare website. As a courtesy, please put all your cell phones on vibrate mode or turn them off during the meeting. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to welcome all of those in the audience. Welcome also to Vice Chair Higashi, Commissioners Hirano, Iwasa, Kimura, Menti, and Panas, and our staff. Thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Iwasa announced that she'll be late to the meeting, but she will be attending. Thank you. As directed by the memorandum issued by Council Chair Anderson dated July 5, 2019, digital minutes will be utilized to record the proceedings of this commission. These minutes are created using an audio recording. To achieve accuracy, it is important that everyone properly identify themselves before speaking when making a motion. Thank you. The commission will now take testimony on all the items on the agenda. We will call on testifiers in the order in which your name was submitted. If you have not signed up, please do so now. Sign-up forms are on the table as you entered. When your name is called, please approach the testifier's table, state your name, and the item on which you are testifying and whether you support, oppose, or have comments on the measure. You will have 3 minutes in which to speak. Your cooperation will be greatly appreciated by all of us so that everyone will have a fair chance to testify. And the first speaker is on the sign-up form. Seeing none?
Easier.
For questions and.
Oh.
Yeah, no one here.
So no one here has registered to testify. Anybody else in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda. Okay, so we move on to the review of pending real property tax legislation. Oh, welcome,
Sorry I'm late.
Natalie Iwasa. So, Commissioner Iwasa, you know, we all of us introduced ourselves the last time and said a little bit about ourselves. So,
Okay.
yeah, would you introduce yourself and
Sure.
yeah, give us some of your background?
I'm Natalie Wassa. I was actually on the first Real Property Tax Advisory Commission with Amy. And were you on?
No.
No.
With her?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm a CPA and certified fraud examiner. I ran for city council last year in 2014. I pay attention to what happens at city council. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys on this issue because there's a lot going on.
Okay, thank you, Natalie.
You're welcome.
Okay, so as I was saying, we're now on to review of pending real property tax legislation. Commissioners, review of the following pending legislation bills 30 and 33 requested by Budget Chair Manahan. Shall we start with Bill 30, which allows buildings that use cold seawater air conditioning systems an exemption from real property taxes at 30% of the assessed value. May I call upon the administration representative to be available should any commissioner or testifier have questions regarding this exemption? Chair recognizes Stephen Takara, Assessment Administrator. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Good afternoon.
Any comments you want to make
Oh,
before?
I'm sorry, should I wait?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just
Go
was gonna be available. I didn't have any opening
Oh,
statement or
okay.
anything.
Go ahead.
I just was gonna kind of be available for conversation or questions.
Okay. So hearing no comments or questions on Bill 30, move on to Bill 33, which is related to real property tax exemptions for homes. Any comments by Mr. Takara regarding Bill 33?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I
Huh?
was going back to 30. I didn't realize that. Okay, so I do have some comments on 30, sorry.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, maybe Ms. Iwasa is familiar with Bill 30 and the deep sea, cold deep sea water.
Cold seawater.
And I believe I guess the proposing people who support this were informed that the tax advisory was gonna hear it or put it on the agenda. And
It was on the agenda.
yeah, I was kind of expecting them to be here to, I guess, provide conversation, but I guess we're concerned about the fiscal impact of Bill 30 because there's a lot of unknowns. I'm not sure if you guys are, I guess, privy to some of the conversations and some of the discussions that occurred during testimony and committee meetings. So I guess the biggest concern, I guess BFS has is the fiscal impact. One other twist that maybe I should kind of share is this is kind of a unique situation, meaning that there's alternate energy exemptions that is given to the companies or the applicant that offer the alternate energy, wind, I guess, other type. But this is unique where they're not providing any kind of alternate energy. They're providing a reduction, apparently. That's why maybe I was kind of hoping the other people would kind of share in their view. Is that kind of a unique situation where they offer a technology or methodology that reduces, I guess, energy consumption versus providing an alternate energy. So it's kind of a pioneering or a new kind of a concept. And also, I guess they're asking, inquiring about the easements in which the underground or the infrastructure may run under city properties or city roads to reach the target buildings. I'm not sure if those easements or that type of property should be taxable or not. So that might be all on the table. So again, I'm just trying to provide talking points and things that were on my mind as administrator that maybe you guys can provide insight.
Chair.
Yes, please, commissioners, please identify
Amy
yourself.
Hirano. Are there many companies that have already signed up to be participating in this program?
Again, I'm so cloudy on that's why I was kind of hoping the other party would, I guess, show up because my brief understanding was that they wanted to have this exemption in place to kind of encourage the registrants or sign up or commitment. I'm not sure how, the chicken or the egg or what comes before what and what commitment. My understanding, the basic concept is that they needed commitment from First Hawaiian Bank and all these other buildings to go forward with this project. And part of that would be
Tax exemption.
knowing that they would get some kind of exemption or real property tax relief. That's kind of the picture. So,
Any other questions?
Natalie Iwasa, I'll just make a comment. I'm already on record as opposing this bill. We have a lot of exemptions. I think you folks got the report last time of all the sections and the total, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is about $150 million. And I think we really need to get a hold of what's happening with all of that before we try to add something like this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Sure. Matthew Panaz.
has the department taken a run at what the fiscal impact would be?
They gave us preliminary numbers. Because it was based upon their information, which kind of had some discrepancy to our numbers. It could range from 9 to 10 million to 14 million. That's the initial number, the 20 or so. But then we don't know the capacity. Apparently, there's a capacity to how many buildings can be serviced by this, I guess, option, and what buildings and the value of the buildings. Also, there's buildings that may have been on the list that already exempt. Government buildings, state buildings, city buildings, buildings that have nonprofits on them, so they're non-taxable already. So again, those numbers could fluctuate from as low as 9 million to tens of millions of dollars per year. And I think it's a 3-year program at 30% of the assessed value. So, but it's significant if 10 million is significant. I don't know.
Scott Higashi, I know you don't know the answer to this probably, Steve, but I would assume that this technology, at least the way the introduction is written in the bill, is creating some savings because it is not using oil-based energy generation, which refers to renewal. It reduces the use of millions of gallons of oil. So maybe the other commissioners know this. Doesn't that suggest that there is a savings to the businesses who are going to use this technology on their energy costs, or specifically the AC?
Yeah, so that's what I guess. Thank you for. I have that in my notes as well. Is that it's like they're going to get double benefit. They're going to get a reduction in their electricity bill, and also a real property tax relief. And that's the customer that's getting the benefit, not the provider, which I was trying to articulate earlier. So that's a twist in itself.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Steve. So moving on to Bill 33. Would you like to offer some comments?
I maybe I should
Yeah.
kind of introduce or explain my
Maybe you
understanding
can
of the
prompt
bill.
some questions that way.
Yeah. So Bill 33 proposes to, I don't know, lack of a better word, remove the exemption amount if your property value is X amount. So let's say those at 64 and younger, with Bill 3 passing, you would get a $100,000 exemption. Before this, so this current tax year, we're getting $80,000, and then 65 older, you get 120. But now, next fiscal year is going to be 140. So, my understanding of Bill 33 is, if a property value is at a certain amount, or there's a threshold, those age 64 and below will not get an exemption amount, but the ones that 65 or older will retain the 140. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. So the X factor is it down to 0 exemption amount? And what is the threshold of that value? Should I let you guys digest that, or keep coming at you guys with some?
Yes.
Natalie Wassa, so what did the administration have in mind as far as that threshold of when that exemption would be gone?
No, yeah, I me myself, I not privy to that, but I ran some numbers, so I have threshold amounts, beginning at $1 million and then so forth, and can kind of give you an idea of the fiscal, what would mean to the taxpayer or the property owner, as well as the revenue to the city. So just to give you a bearing, if the property value was 0, So everybody age 65 or 64 and below had to pay or lost their $100,000 exemption. Everybody would be paid $350 more. And there's about 75,000 claimants at that level. So the city would gain $26 million. Just to give you a, the raw extreme. Okay, so moving forward, so if that threshold was $1 million and it went to zero, 14,000 people would be affected, meaning that they would pay 14,000 people or homeowners or property taxpayers would pay the $350, which represents about 22% of the demographics of home exemption claimants. The added revenue would be basically $4.9 million. So moving forward, if it was 1.1 million, roughly 10,600 people would pay more. Added revenue would be 3.7 mil, which represents about 16% of the home exemption claimants. So I don't know if you can kind of see the trend. So as values go up, the number of claimants decrease, and as far as then the revenues also decrease. So 1.2, roughly 8,000 people would pay $2.8 million in added revenue, which represent 12% of the demographic. At 1.3, 9% of the people would be affected, or 6,000 homeowners, and added revenue would be about 2.1 mil. At 1.4 mil threshold, 4,600 people would pay more. Added revenue is 1.6 mil, which represents 7% of that home exemption. Then up to 1.5, it really kind of starts tapering off. 3,600 homeowners, 1.3 million added revenue represents about 5.7% of the population of those who have a home exemption. And it just, at that point, above 1.5, it's less than 1 million. And, why would you do legislation if all this means added $1 million more? I mean, doesn't kind of seem feasible. So I don't know. I mean, that's just to give you an idea if it was at those increments and the added revenue. Given that they would be wiped out of their home exemption amount. And then, so the caveat is that having a home exemption would allow you to be eligible for other programs. So the biggest one would be the exclusion of residential A. So you have a home exemption, even if you're not enjoying the home exemption amount, you're still be in the residential class, not the residential A. And then I think the B&B 85, 89 was where you need to have a home exemption to be eligible for a B&B. I forget what it was. But anyway, there's other programs that you would need a home exemption to be eligible for. Even part of the second part of Bill 33 is the low income, which would require having a home exemption. But that's, I don't know, can we save that till later? You guys want to talk about the first part of Bill 33, or you guys want me to go to the second part of Bill 33? Or am I even making sense?
Earl, you have?
Yes, Earl Mente. So, Stephen, I was going to ask you that question anyway. So, on the bill, there's subparagraph 3 where the value of the property and it's blank, and the amount is $1. So, I'm assuming that's the purpose of $1 to keep it a home exemption. You file, you're not really getting much except $1, but.
Correct, yeah. So we kind of talked about it systemically, the $1 or zero. I think, I haven't talked to the drafters or the crafters of this bill, but when we looked at it was, dollar may be problematic when we do our calculations and systemically for our computer system versus just zeroing it out. We may have to talk to the crafters of it or the introducers of the bill. But that's basically what, yeah. So we took it as 0. I mean,
Thank you.
Okay, I think you can move on.
so the second part, amends the low-income tax credit, where right now it's if the property owner only owns one property and has a income of 60,000 and below, then they would, so 3% of their income is their maximum real property tax bill. So just for example's sake, so if your income was 60,000, 3% of that is 1,800. So most you're gonna pay in real property tax is 1,800. So if your tax obligation is 3,000, that 1,200 would be a credit, and that's what the city would absorb. I don't know. I guess I'm looking for a reaction against me, but okay, I'm sure you guys understand. So I think what Bill 33 is suggesting is increasing that 60,000 to, is it 65? Yeah, 65,000. So as far as the fiscal impact, again, increasing it 5,000, that would logically allow those earning up to 5, so more people. A few years ago, okay, so just a disclaimer. This is a Treasury program, and when I spoke with the Treasury people, I was trying to find out what was the impact when they raised the threshold from 50 to 60, about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, or I'm not sure, kind of recent. I don't know if Ms. Iwasa knows that, but it went from 50 to 60,000. So there was more applicants. So I was kind of trying to use that. But right now there's, in our presentation last time, I think I want to say like 3,000 applicants in this program. I want to say like 4 mil in tax credit. So, like other tax relief programs, a lot of people don't know about them. I mean, I gotta think that there's more people, right? I mean, Ms. Iwasa kind of raised proactive that if more people knew about this, I'm sure more participants would occur. Like any other program we have. I mean, we go to fairs and stuff, and people still don't know about the home exemption. They lived there for 20 years, and okay. So.
Great. Natalie Wassa, I'll just make some comments just so everybody kind of understands. So the theory behind this, having a threshold where the exemption disappears, is that there are people who are better off, who have higher assessed valued homes, and therefore should not get the benefit of the exemption. That's the theory. I'm not saying I'm taking a position one way or another. Of course, there are people who have had their homes for generations and fall into that $1 million above assessment value. And then, of course, there have been concerns raised over the last year or so about the credit, and that's why, my understanding is that's why this increase is being considered now. But as Steve mentioned, I think there's a lot of education that needs to be happening along the lines of this exemption and as well as the credit.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just more information for you guys to kind of consider. Okay, so the other thing was, real property taxes, some feel should be a progressive. So the higher your tax higher your value, more taxes you should pay. I mean, residential A kind of says that, but a lot of cases when this Res A came into being was that, and even now when children or whoever get deeded their property, is that they get this, $700-800 million, $2 million property, and their income doesn't support that, just that they were somehow given this property. So when we talk about values being justifiable for them to be subject to more taxes, that may not be the case. And I don't know if that's what you kind of started off saying, is that the values may be an indicator, but like anything else, there's exceptions and more exceptions than I think a lot of people consider. And that's, the big thing was that people don't want to be taxed out of their homes. So,
Yes?
Earl Menti, I have a comment. I'm on the Board of Realtors. I'm not representing the Board of Realtors, but I've heard some research that the board has done. Through Residential A, they determined, and again, I was just told this, I didn't see the actual figures of the research, but I was told that in their research, middle income parties own properties up to about 1.5, 1.6, and before it got to mainly affluent or higher income. So if this bill is to consider, hey, let's be progressive and mainly do not give the exemption for the higher income, then that level or area of demarcation where you're splitting middle income and higher income, probably going to be much higher than $1 million.
interesting, yeah, interesting, that point.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Steve, I have a question.
Sure.
Were you going to set your revenue estimates down in writing for anybody if this bill continues, or do you think this bill will move? It is sponsored by Bill 33.
Right. I think it passed second reading.
Yeah.
So if somebody throws out a number as far as a threshold, I can provide that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll probably follow up with that later.
Okay.
Yeah, stratification is what I'm talking about that you were.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of did it right
Right,
before,
right,
but
right.
I can make a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Earl Menti again. So could you provide that to the commissioners, that from $1 million up to 1.5 million, the information you just gave us?
Sure.
And the threshold, so at
Sure,
least we have.
yeah.
The stratification that you give on that
yeah,
spreadsheet, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can give it to Randy, or, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. Commissioners.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're moving on now to commission goals, objectives, and timetable. Council Resolution 17-112 provides that the commission shall conduct a systematic review of the city's real property tax systems, classes, exemptions, credits, and minimum property tax using such standards as equity and efficiency. At this point, we're open to general discussion. I wanted to offer a perspective on how to move forward with some structure, and to hear maybe bills in the context of that structure, as well as to entertain suggestions by commissioners within that structure as well. So at least we have some rational basis for going forward. And the proposal is to adopt subcommittees as we've done in the past commissions. The subcommittees this time would be a little bit different. I think one of the major concerns starting in 2018 was the increased valuations that most properties receive. I guess my alarm was half hour late or something, but, and so I would propose one of the subcommittees be comprised of commissioners interested in the valuation process. And as mentioned before, the valuation process involves the adoption of the new Marshall and Swift replacement cost new methodology, and this was adopted by the Real Property Advisory, Real Property Assessment Division. And that would probably require, us to hear from the city as well as private appraisers on how that system works, how it was implemented, what the impact has been on all property values. And this is not land values now, this is improvement values. My understanding is that it's a very huge document, it's very expensive to acquire. So there should be some transparency with that, and the basis upon which the city adopted that particular methodology as well. My information also on another topic, still within valuation, is that Hawaii is one of the few jurisdictions that do not use the income approach to valuation. You usually have three approaches: comparables, replacement cost, and income approach. The city deleted income approach in the past, and I think this committee would request information about why the city chose not to continue with the income approach and what the impact would be if we decided to adopt the income approach along with the other two methodologies. So I'm just throwing out examples about what the committee could or could not do. The second committee that I would propose under this structured approach is rates and classifications. Rates being, as Steve mentioned, possibly adopting graduated rates for all classifications and adopting property tax rates on a graduated basis for all classifications, not just residential A. The other one being taxing, say, some properties at a higher rate, setting up new classifications, say, for properties that are income producing but still classified as residential today. I have in mind TVUs. And I'm talking about, say, legal TVUs because they have the golden ticket to make money and their resale value is higher because of that golden certificate. You could also include in that category things like monster homes, vacant luxury homes, what have you, anything along those lines. So those are just two examples under that committee that I propose. The third one being credits and incentives. And that's where we get into all these other proposals about incentivizing workforce housing. We have a lot of credits and exemptions for affordable and low-income housing, but perhaps there's interest in incentivizing moving into workforce housing, providing incentives for both the developers as well as the people who purchase units that might be considered workforce housing. The other one being renewable energy. That seems to be on everyone's mind today. I'm not specifying seawater, but anything else along those lines. We do have current exemptions and credits for those, so just be mindful that there are incentives now for renewable energy, but it might bear looking at. Another example would be to tie certain exemptions or incentives to an opportunity zone concept that has been adopted under the federal income tax and now by the state of Hawaii income tax, and tying our property tax credits or exemptions to opportunity zone jurisdictions, which is targeted to investing new construction in depressed areas to improve the economic conditions of that area. One major area being Chinatown and everything else, yeah. And there is a map for those who are interested in opportunity zones describing which areas on Oahu qualify as opportunity zones. The window for that is short, though, unless the feds extend that. So that's my modest proposal, is to set up 3 subcommittees The issue here is that, we only have a few meetings to break out into these subcommittees, the subcommittees to propose testifiers, because we're going to have to get people online committed to testify from all sides of these proposals. And that's going to require scheduling and everything else. So, we need to get started as soon as possible. So I would ask if there's anyone who has other suggestions, proposals. What we probably need to do and conclude today is to assign commissioners who are interested in a particular subcommittee, and for that subcommittee to meet and decide on a chair for that subcommittee. And basically, after that, you meet on your own to decide your agenda and what your topics would be and how you want to conduct the subcommittee's business and what speakers you want to present and proposals you want to present for these speakers at future commission meetings. So it's open to general discussion right now.
This is Amy Hirano. Randall, we'll have to be transparent on all of these so-called committee meetings, right? Or can we meet them without?
No, because you're meeting in less than quorum. and
Okay.
you can, they call it permitted interaction.
Okay, so less than 3 or less than 5, whatever, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Natalie Wassa, so will these meetings, will somebody be available to do the recording and keep the minutes, or would we be responsible for that?
Generally, yes, you keep your own minutes or maybe topics of discussion, and the report would come from the committee.
The chair.
The chair, and made public at these meetings.
And then one more question. So as we go, let's say each committee, well, there may be different, but they have 2 or 3 meetings during the month. And then as we go through our monthly meetings with the entire commission, would each committee then give a report, the status? And how do you envision that happening?
That sounds like a good suggestion. I would think we'd have to establish priorities now if we adopt these committees. So, for example, on valuation, that seems to be an important topic to all of us. So we need to maybe try to set that committee up and get it up and running and communicate with Randall on who we want to speak at the next commission meeting. I know Steve looks like he's itching to do that anyway, so we'll invite Steve. And then, no, I mean, not right now, but I mean, in future commission meetings. But go ahead if you want to say something.
I just would like to kind of share that our availability is to any and all subcommittees that we've attended subcommittees in the last commission. I forget what the subcommittees were, but we attended all of them that we were invited to. So we're open to attending and participating. Having said that, I think it went through, might have to go through Randall, but of note, next meeting, the 12th, what I saw on the next meeting was kind of scheduled for the 12th of September. We'll be attending a conference. So I don't know how that would work. So
Yeah, the next one is going to be important for Steve to attend. What's the procedure on rescheduling dates?
Pretty open right now.
Oh, okay.
But it's up to the membership if they're
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
make that date.
So that whole week is no good.
I come back
Steve.
Friday. I'm in flight Thursday, that day.
Okay, so you're gone Thursday?
I'm gone Friday, actually. Friday the 6th, I think, and come back the 12th.
Oh, return on the, okay.
I mean, so I'm on island the 12th at like 5 p.m. So
The 6th to the 12th is
Bad,
availability?
yeah,
Okay.
bad,
Okay.
bad. Because I think Commissioner Joy said, well, I'm glad you're here today, because I remember she was saying that she may not make today, but,
No, I rescheduled my flight arrangement.
oh,
I changed my flight arrangement, so I could attend.
Or maybe I should. No, I cannot, it's already.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, on the segue,
Let me poll everybody.
yeah, I failed to mention that earlier, and with all this going on, so Chair kind of read my mind that I guess I'm not a poker player that you could see that I wanted to speak, so.
August, wait, when is the next meeting? I don't have it. What's it?
September 12th, Thursday.
Oh, September 12th, sorry. Yeah. So, how is everyone's schedule for
I
Friday?
have my calendar with me.
Were you suggesting Friday? You'd be
I'll
available?
be back on Friday, yeah.
This next week would be good. There's no holidays here.
Oh, you mean the week following?
Well, this is when
Mhm,
we're scheduled,
mhm.
and this is they're all open.
Friday
Okay,
the
so Randall,
13th.
yeah, okay. So maybe we'll stay away from the 13th. Randall is suggesting the following week is pretty open. Week of the 16th. How is that for everybody?
On the 19th, which is 1 week later,
The 19th, push it back 1 week?
still Thursday.
And that'll give, yeah, that's Thursday, and that'll give the committees time to really work up the issues. Tentative, can we do that? Everybody else? Okay, and then, so, I told you, Randall, about my situation on October. So if we're going to move that back 1 week, can I also suggest, when was that meeting?
Oh, yeah, that was going to be the date.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah, can we move back October 10 meeting 1 week to October 17? Okay, is that okay for everybody? We'll throw it out. Thank you. Thank you, Randall. I'm glad we caught that early, so thank you for the information, Steve.
It actually helped him too.
Okay, good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so, again, I guess Randall is our conduit, so,
I'll make sure that
Mhm, mhm.
the room should be available. I don't have the full calendar, but yeah, there are no committee meetings that week.
yeah, and then, but even for the subcommittees, when invited, we're more than happy
Yeah.
to,
Thank you.
accommodate.
On the subcommittee meetings, is it okay to have the meetings at a private place, like, my law firm, or?
Generally, they had it here, but.
Oh,
you
if it's
want-
available, that's fine.
Yeah.
If it's not available, I can volunteer my office.
We can meet in, one of the conference rooms on the side.
Oh, okay, that's good.
As long as we're allowed to leave. Nah, just kidding.
Okay, yeah.
Do they have to be, sorry. Does
Go
it
ahead.
have to be during work hours, or could meet afterwards?
Or the subcommittee?
Yeah. It can be any time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm open,
Is available,
yeah.
I'm not sure, but,
For me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Can be after hours, that's fine.
Yeah, Sunday morning is good then, okay.
Oh, no, I'm okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Uh, Thank you, Steve. Any other discussions, opinions, comments, questions from the commissioners? Yes.
Natalie
Natalie.
Ross. I just want to put this on the record. Our real property tax system is huge. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts. And so I appreciate the introduction of the valuations as something that we would look at. I've always maintained, or for a long time now that we need to look at every component of the system, but recognize that we have a limited amount of time, a limited number of people who are working on this, and so that's not possible at this point. But for future commissions, I'm hoping that they'll be able to take another chunk of that system and look at that. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Anyone else? If not, then we should start to volunteer for, our committees. Oh, okay. So do I have a motion to adopt the 3 committees as mentioned?
So move.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any objections? Seeing none, motion carried. So shall we? Yes, I have a volunteer.
Yes, you do, Natalie. I'd like to volunteer for the Valuations Subcommittee.
Joy Kimura, I'd like to volunteer for the rates and classifications and the credits and incentives subcommittees.
Oh,
Or just one subcommittee?
yeah.
Oh.
Two, yeah? You wanted 2. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joy. So rates and classifications and incentives.
Yes.
Yeah. And Natalie, valuation.
Valuations.
Yeah. Yes, Amy? You're going to volunteer for?
I'll go to rates classifications.
Amy, rates. Yes, Scott?
I'll go to valuations, please.
Scott, valuation.
Matthew pronounced exemptions, and if you need somebody for rates,
Credits and incentives.
Credits and
Yeah.
incentives, yep.
Incentives, all right.
Right, I'm open to anything, whatever you think needs some beefing up.
Why don't you sit on all? You can be ex officio. Let's see, we have 1, 2 on rates, we have 2 on valuations, we have 2 on incentives. Is everybody here?
I think on valuations. I think
You wanna
might
go
need some help
valuations?
there.
That's a big one.
They need help.
Okay, let me review now. For rates, we have Joy and Amy.
Rates?
Yeah. Is that what you said? What did you say?
Oh, yeah, rates classification, sorry.
Sorry, okay. And then for valuation, we have Natalie, Scott, and Earl. For incentives, we have Joy and Matt. Yeah? Okay. And then I'll kind of like, the chair will kind of like flit around and maybe attend each one or
Everybody.
so. Yeah. That's why I was offering my office. Because so, so whatever's convenient for everybody. And then if you could let everyone know, I guess, about, I guess we can break and meet after the session today for your committee meetings, and then pick a chair, and then we can start scheduling meetings of your own and all that. So, oh, did you want to discuss it here? Yeah, okay. Okay, so who wants to be chair of valuation?
I don't mind doing that.
Okay, thank you. Natalie's chair of valuation. Incentives, credits and incentives.
I can volunteer to be chair, or if Matthew wants it, you're welcome to have it.
Okay, why don't you be co-chairs? And then, and then, rates and classifications. Oh, we only had, Amy and Joy. So, I guess Joy is already, you don't?
No.
Okay, so maybe you be chair of rates and classification, and Matthew be chair of
I think young
credits.
people should take the chair.
Sure. So, why don't you guys get together amongst yourselves and you decide, maybe you should structure meetings like in the next few weeks, regular meetings, and then I guess that'll provide some discipline in you getting up to speed on your own agenda, the testifiers you want at the next meeting. I just propose to move things along, that for the next commission meeting, we have the testifiers for valuation lined up. What you propose to have. Steve is going to be here. If you have anybody from private industry, appraisers, anybody else, then I think we should probably give them as much notice as possible to show up next month.
For the commission meeting,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I think if you put in a notice out, I mean, I'm sure the website too, right? You'll be putting that out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the committee also to propose who they want to hear from, you know. Yeah. And then after that, we might have follow-up on the next meeting, and then, but start anew with the other two committees. Okay. And then we need like a week notice to set the agenda on the speakers, what we'll talk about, everything else. Yeah.
Just have a general section.
Right. Steve, do you know, or Randall, do you know of any bills pending on valuation? Just on valuation for now?
No, there aren't any.
No, but you mentioned income approach.
Yeah.
I believe last year there was a bill, and I want to say Bill 12, that talked about income approach. But that one was a threshold driven. I want to say 12. I can get back to you guys, or back to Randall on that.
What do you mean threshold?
I don't know if court counsel, but I think it was like $100 million. Then you used income approach, something like that. I forget what it was. I don't know if
I don't remember that
commission.
one.
Yeah,
What's the reason for that?
it was the higher value properties that they wanted the income approach. Yeah, Commissioner
Okay.
Milano might have.
Does-
I remember seeing you around. So.
Just to anticipate what the committee might ask, do you have a survey, 50-state survey or county municipal survey on the various approaches each one uses?
No, it's. I mean, just to give, there's some states and jurisdictions that apply the income approach, but just to let you know that it's very dependent upon participation of the income people. So they got to give us the information. So there's usually a lag, and then there could be discrepancy as far as what the actual income and what the income that they give us. So it's very complicated.
Do you know when the income approach was? It was available. I mean, it was one of the three, right? And then you repealed it.
I don't know. Back when I started back in the early 90s, it wasn't there. So maybe back when the real property tax was under the state. I'm not sure the actual history. But,
I see.
yeah.
Do you know of a survey that, you know, indicates which jurisdictions adopt what, you know, criteria?
Again, back when I believe it was Bill 12 that we did research and comparison as far as how they implement that, implement the income approach, and there's all kind of caveats. You know, interesting that you would bring up and the other classification as far as the properties in the residential class or residential properties that are income producing. For instance, like you mentioned, TVUs, apartment buildings, you know, but again, getting into kind of the general policy is that once you start, or if the intent is to increase rates or taxes, then that the ripple effect oftentimes is passed to the tenant, which is detrimental or could be adversarial to the tenant. Anyway, again, we can talk story in subcommittees, but just to kind of maybe a broad ask of real property is, and I just to ask, because I know you guys are still trying to get you guys feet under you guys selves, but if you guys had an idea what you wanted to talk about, because these three are very broad, sort of valuation stuff. I mean, if you had any kind of idea that gives us something to prepare, or I don't know. I mean, because I guess what we, time is of the essence where, if you say, oh, how about this? And then it's like, oh, okay, we got to give you documentation or surveys and stuff like that. So we're going to try and make best effort. And I know, everybody's got other things to do and stuff. But, I don't know how this works. But, if there's ideas or things that you want to focus on as far as the approaches to value and, another thing is, I'll let you guys know, we do heavy market modeling in our residential. So that's a big animal in itself. To explain that, that may take a couple of days, because just last week we had a 3-day workshop explaining market modeling to our staff, just to give you an idea. So 24 hours right there in itself. But,
Yes, Earl.
Earl Mente, so Steve, I have a question. You're using the market value and the cost approach, and that's across all classifications, right? Commercial as well as residential, hotel. Or is it weighted differently when we get to commercial, industrial, hotel versus residential?
yeah, again,
So there's no income in any class, right?
No, but we do consider it, because when we go to board or taxable court, oftentimes the appellant furnishes us their income approach, or if they have an appraiser that conducts an income approach, that we'll look at it. It's not to say that we use it and apply it, but we do understand it and maybe look at the validity of that approach. Again, what I was about to say was that market data determines, I guess, right? So if there's, so more data, better, so as you go to commercial, non-residential properties, industrial, commercial, you may not have as amount of sales relative to residential and so forth. So, oftentimes the cost approach is more what we call, we reconcile using the cost approach in most non-residential properties.
Amy Hirano, our chair mentioned in this rates committee, subcommittee, of the graduated rates for all classifications. What would administration's position be on something like that?
I don't know. I mean, whatever you guys tell us, we're going to do, right? I mean, we may kick and scream, but at the end of the day, we just carry out what is passed, right? I mean, we're good soldiers, I would like to think, and we offer what we feel is fair and equitable. I think that's what we're asked of, as far as fiscal impact and who's going to affect. That's what we try to relay, and then the decision makers make their decisions. We oppose some and we favor some, but the big elephant in the room is revenue and balancing the budget with the increasing costs and stuff. But,
As long as we give you more money, right?
well, I mean, the complexity of our tax system is grown, or is much more complex back 20, 30 years ago. And with that being said, the taxpayer or the property owner is just like, hey, whatever, it's like, and to explain certain programs, the eligibility. So we may need resources, staff, computer systems, and stuff like that to accommodate such changes.
Scott Higashi, Steve, just a point of clarification since you're here, because I think the valuation committee will contend with this. So the city implemented new software, is that right, for valuations?
Yeah, like Chair Kawakami said, we just started our Marshall and Swift program.
And so do you know the impact? So suppose you were to compare the average increase in valuations prior to this new software and then the first year of using this new software, you have a difference?
That's hard to determine because the market always changes, right? The market is dynamic. So to pin it or to weigh it solely on methodology is hard to do.
We could compare certain neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, we can ask. We can look at it that way. Yeah.
Does the system make it easier for the department to value properties? Is it more instantaneous?
Like anything else, it changed the way we do things as far as how we input. CoreLogic or Marshall and Swift has their own system, which our staff adopted to. So when we input or categorize or we update records, it's just using their system.
Yeah.
So, you know, to answer your question, I guess we can look at it raw. I mean, meaning that did values stabilize where the allocation of the building is that, you know, I think you might be leading to that as far as the building, because most of the non-residential properties or what is applied, well, what it utilizes the cost approach, which would in this case would be Marsh and Swift, you know, I don't know, maybe I should ask the question. Is that what the commission is asking?
Well, I mean, I
for?
think that from a visibility perspective, rates are very visible, right? And it's very clear in the statute how that works, and classifications are published. I think one of the mysteries for the taxpayer is valuation.
Sure.
It's very difficult, it's very complicated, as you say.
Sure.
But it is very, very much why I think people are concerned about the property tax, the amount of property tax they're paying, not the rate, but the actual amount of property tax they're paying, because values have escalated. So my questions are more along the lines of systems are tricky, and therefore, you know, they're using logic behind them. And are there, you know, my other question would be, are there nuances that the system is built for to consider the nuances of Hawaii? Are there particular features to the system that account for Hawaii being the kind of property state that we are? It's an island. It's highly particularized to neighborhood, especially on the neighbor islands, you know, things like that. So I mean, on Oahu, even so, you know, the North Shore is going to be valued very different next door to each other. So I guess I'm wondering what impact this new system has, because I didn't actually know that as a taxpayer or as a commissioner that a new system was in place. So
if I understand the question,
so they designed this, you know, when you guys bought this system, right? The city decided to buy the system. Was it just a platform purchase off the shelf, or there's a lot of things that went into it to help the system consider Hawaii as a unique jurisdiction?
So they actually created, when I say they, CoreLogic or / Marshall and Swift, they created a Hawaii manual specific to Hawaii cost factors. So generally, Marshall and Swift has these cost factor replacement costs, RCN, replacement cost new minus less depreciation, LD, less depreciation. So that's a general concept, right? You build a house, then depreciate it, you know, X amount. But then, you know, what is the cost to build? What is the cost of a 2x4 and all these materials coming to Hawaii, shipping? And then we're talking about other associated factors, entrepreneurial profitability, those things that are all provided by Marsh and Swift.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why interesting. Commissioner Chair Komiko brought up, you know, private as well as the city. So
Seems to me, well, one of my concerns would be replacement cost here, in particular, it could be wildly out of line with what any manual or system could provide, because just geographic isolation. I mean, you know, there's an argument that if the bread's not baked here, it's more expensive, right? So I mean, it'll be interesting. I guess I'm trying to understand whether this system, my guess is systems are designed to make the business of the city faster and easier.
Correct.
Right.
But does with that, accuracy and
correct.
Right.
So the accuracy is going to be, I mean, so my question would be from the perspective of the taxpayer, has this had any disparate or negative impact on them just because it's been easier for us to do as a city, whether it's actually been, you know, equitable for the taxpayer?
I don't think there were. I guess I'm trying to digest the question or answer the question as far as in regards to concerns from the public. When I say concerns, has there a spike in appeals or tax appeal court filings I haven't seen a spike due to our cost factor system. You know, it's been different reasons, I feel, that board cases exist and taxable court cases exist. You know, I don't know if one of the reports we provided was the appeal count. It's been pretty steady.
Well, appeals
So,
are, I mean,
yeah.
the appeal on based on valuation is complicated business. You know, for the average taxpayer who's paying their property tax out of a mortgage impound, for example, they're just not gonna notice that change until they have to write a little bit of a check. So we don't have to, I don't, you know, answer all the questions. I guess I'm just telling you in preparation for some questions at the subcommittee level, that would be some areas of interest for me.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if we may, if we can, I'd like to go back to the timeline and get a better feel for, you know, what we're trying to accomplish for each meeting. So, you know, we know that our report is due the 2nd of December, then I'm guessing that the month before we would have to approve a draft or something along those lines. And then I don't know if we also need to allow for a comment period or if that comes after the draft or after the final. I can't remember how that part of it works, but I think we need to discuss that a little more.
Mhm. So, yeah, we have September, October, November. Two in November, okay. We did before the 7th. Yeah. And I don't recall what we did in the last one. Did we have a draft? Did you draft did you circulate a draft before it was finalized?
Yeah, so we did in ours, we had a draft and then each, well, I can't remember if we had committees, but, yeah, so it was probably a little different than the subsequent ones, but, you know, if I heard you or understood you correctly, the valuations committee would kind of do their presentation September,
Mhm.
and then we would have following months would be the other committees. But it may be better to have each committee do a presentation at each of the next, like September and October, so we kind of have a feeling for what is being discussed, and
Mhm.
if we want to
Mhm.
follow up on our own on something, we have time to do that, and then make those, any information
I
known,
see,
or,
I
you know,
see.
I,
You mean sort of like a status report?
Yes,
where we're going.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that sounds reasonable.
and then, so the committee function at this point would be to basically gather information and an understanding of what is currently what is happening, and then if we're talking about getting presentations, what the opinions are of the presenters. I'm guessing that we would also have people who might want to come from the public and testify.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so I'm just trying to figure out what we would be presenting then as a committee at the full commission meetings.
I guess because if you meet once or twice before the September commission meeting, I would think you'd come up with issues that you feel are important for the commission to consider, and then put that up for discussion at the commission meeting. And I was hoping that we could make a lot more progress by way of testifiers, as far as the subcommittee testifiers with valuation.
Okay.
And that be the primary focus of the commission in hearing testimony. I mean, the commission meeting is open to any testifier on any subject, right,
Mhm.
that we're considering. But as far as our subcommittee, a structured approach, I thought valuation would need to get a head start, at least on this next meeting,
Mhm.
not to foreclose reports and discussion on issues considered by the other subcommittees. So I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so the subcommittees would be meeting and gathering information, getting testimony, and then providing the information in a summary form for the commission. The commission would then, the commissioners would make any other, have any other input that they wanted to make. also, guessing questions that they might have that the committee could then follow up on. And then at some point, the committees would make a recommendation to the full commission.
Yes, the only qualification I have in your statement is testimony.
Mhm.
I don't know that the subcommittees are going to schedule testimony. You see what I mean? I mean, at your meetings, you might have someone. Is it considered testimony if a subcommittee invites, say, Steve or another expert
That
to
would
their
want to be
subcommittee?
like a presentation, but members of the public would be able to attend those subcommittee meetings as well, correct?
I didn't
No.
envision that. I don't think we
Oh,
ever
okay.
had.
Okay.
I don't think we ever had the public invited to a subcommittee.
Okay, then thank you for that clarification.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Generally are more detailed meetings among, in this case, 2 or 3 members, and
Okay.
not technically, it's not needed to be publicly announced
Yeah.
or available.
And I think rather than so-called testifiers, we're calling resource people, right?
Right.
To come to the subcommittee meetings, where we can actually find information and question, answer that.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
more
not,
of an information.
yeah, it's an
gathering.
informational.
Right.
Oh,
Okay, got
Thank
it.
you.
And among the members, they can discuss and decide, what they want to present to the commission as a whole.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Just to kind of follow up on what Commissioner Hirano mentioned, as far as changes or amendments in the ordinance, one of the things in particular was mentioned or alluded to was the rates, or if there's tiering, similar like Res A, if we tier the other ones, there is cost involved as far as our computer system modifications. So like for the residential A, I don't know what it was, but there's cost involved, like mentioned, so, thank you.
Scott Higashi, but isn't it true, though, that the costs were well worth it to the city?
I would think so. But okay, so having said that, like bills, on a serious note, I guess I'm always serious, I guess, but like Bill 33, for us or the city to implement a threshold and then we zero out, it gets very complicated. We did talk to our vendor about that, and they would need 6 to 9 months to program it. So so in addition to the cost, when it actually is, yeah. So along with that, anytime we touch the computer, yeah. So, we offered, or the city offered to pay expedite fees, and they kind of said, no.
Does it, this is Ray. Does it require the computer to change your billing method? Because a few of us were talking about having to pay recently real property tax, our bills. And, when you go online, boy, that charge is something else. It really discourages using credit cards. And then, so I have to write out 3 checks.
What is the, is it 2%? What do card holders, or what do they charge?
I don't know, but I thought it was 3, but it was discouraging.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys can share that as well. I mean, that's the collection side, but,
Mhm. No, I was just curious. that-
no, so our appeal online, so during our appeal period, December 15th to January 15th, you can appeal online and we don't assess that fee. I don't know if that's,
No, I know.
I don't want
but
to sound.
we're not talking about appeals, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Scott-
appeals is $50 and then whatever the percentage, I know it's gonna be significantly less than the percentage of real property tax bill, but,
Go ahead, Scott.
right now, administration kind of weaving that.
No, Scott Higashi. I mean, the commission received written testimony from a concerned taxpayer who compares his experience in filing taxes with the state, paying his GT for $1, as opposed to, having to pay real property tax and he has to write a check. It's very, I think the comment is, 1, it's expensive, and 2, it's relatively archaic in today's environment from his perspective. He's saying, okay, I can do everything else online. So I guess it's something is something that you guys have looked at? I know it's maybe not you, it's your collections, right?
Yeah, Treasury. And
Treasury.
It might be it might be more higher up. I don't know who makes those decisions.
Well, we'll defer to the chairman to call whoever that would be.
There you go.
I object to this thing being archaic. I happen to be very archaic.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Back to the income approach.
Okay.
So what I heard you say is that the assessors do use the income approach when they feel it's appropriate.
No, we look at it. We don't apply it or implement it. Yeah, so we don't gather data and stuff. I guess what I'm saying is that the data that's given by other appraisers, we look at the validity and see, if the numbers match up.
But all of this is to fair market value, right?
Correct.
So are you saying that the assessors would never take the income approach into account, the profitability of the property to reach, because profitability of the property does go to sales.
That's right.
So you're saying the assessors would never take that into account absent changing the ordinance?
Well, I did speak about the data being available, that the data is hard to come by.
No, it's just
so-
that, say, if you're in appeal and somebody brings up the fact that their property is not as profitable because of different reasons compared to an adjoining property, would that ever be considered absent an ordinance approving that methodology?
Well, we're relying on the two other approaches.
Mhm.
We would consider it. We'd look at it. In other words, we wouldn't ignore it.
Mhm.
But as far as our evaluation, would be based upon the cost and market approach as stated in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Earl Mente. So Stephen, back to that income approach. Does the software have an availability where they could use that in the assessment? I mean, they're not just selling the city, just that one software. I'm sure they're selling across the nation. So I'm assuming they would have all three valuations, and you decide to take only two, and they just eliminate that third methodology for the city and county of Honolulu. Or, I mean, you don't have to answer now. You can always find out from CoreLogic. Yeah, if they do.
Yeah, I would have to look
Yeah,
at.
you could just ask.
Um,
I mean, if you only say
is
we're
the-
only
is the-
using these two
Is the question,
methodologies.
okay, can I
Sure.
clarify the question or ask the question? So is the question, can our system accommodate the income approach?
Right, can the system that you're getting from the vendor, CoreLogic,
Right.
do they have an income approach, valuation, methodology, also with that software that is added on to the software for Honolulu?
We can bring that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so, right, I think we're talking about the same thing, is that, right? So you're asking if our current system can accommodate the income approach?
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
So I can check, and when we meet with the subcommittee, I guess we can get
Right,
back.
right,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
answer at that time.
And just for clarification, so, and I believe we kind of maybe mentioned it in our first meeting, that Tyler Technologies is our vendor for our CAMA system, computer-assisted mass appraisal system, and then CoreLogic is our vendor for our costs.
Tyler Technologies, what?
Tyler Technologies
Camel?
is our CAMA system. It's just an acronym. It's a universal acronym. So CAMA, Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal.
Oh.
Yeah, so CAMA, when we say CAMA system, that's what we're referring
That's
to.
more marketability, sounds like. I mean,
To
market.
determine fair market value.
comparables.
No, that's just
Market
I guess that's our system in which we house all our records in,
Yeah, oh.
which offers cost and market approach. And our
Computerized, what system? Sorry.
Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal,
Oh,
CAMA,
computer
CAMA.
assisted.
That's just the acronym.
Mass appraisal, yeah.
And,
So, yeah. So just Commissioner Mente, I believe, yeah, in your subcommittee, you need to distinguish between that Marshall and Swift which is replacement cost new versus the other two methodologies? Because I believe the,
They're only doing cost approach, right?
No, and market sales.
Right, so.
Marshall and Swift?
No. So Marshall and Swift is our cost approach.
Yeah, yeah, so
And
that's
then-
why I'm saying to
Yeah.
Commissioner Mente, you need to.
Right, so there's
Yeah.
separate vendors for
Oh.
each methodology, right?
Um,
So to determine fair market value, that approach, you're not using the same vendor, Marshall and Swift. Some other software vendor.
True. Okay. Yeah. To answer your question, yes.
Right, okay,
Our
now
cost of
I
yeah
understand.
yeah. So just to clarify and trying to reiterate, I think what is being said is our cost approach factors, our cost approach system is provided by CoreLogic or is the parent company of Marshall and Swift. So, and it could be one and the same. Everybody refers to it as Marshall and Swift, but when you talk to Marshall and Swift, they say they're CoreLogic. So, pardon me if I don't get the ownership
Yeah, okay.
correct. But yeah, we get our cost factor system from CoreLogic, and our market is done within our CAMA system provided by Tyler Technologies. And I think just to further that, I think the question is if our CAMA system or Tyler Technology system can accommodate the income approach, right? And that I'll check and offer that to the,
Subcommittee.
yes,
Yeah, thank you.
right?
And-
Got him, Randall.
Thank you.
Is there, still on valuation, is there a default approach to methodology as between the two by the assessors, cost versus comparables?
No. So both approaches are utilized, and at the end, we reconcile cost approach versus market approach. What the appraiser feels is reflective of the market. Oftentimes we would like to think it should be the same or very similar, and what we feel is more reliable.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
Natalie Wassa, I just have another question on the committees. So when we set up our dates, will the dates of all of the committees be given to Randall and then provided to all of us so that if we want to attend another committee meeting, we can do that? Okay, thank you.
Nothing prevents you from CCing everybody else too, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so, again, sorry to interject, but, if we have it at your office, because you want to oversee each committee.
No, I'm
subcommittee,
not the
right?
overseer,
Oh.
I'm just,
No, we meet here.
Okay,
We meet at the city, it'd be easy for him to.
okay.
No, I don't know even where your office is. Okay,
Oh,
okay, I'll
But okay, we'll make the hot walk over here. Thank you, Amy.
I don't want to cause trouble, so.
Okay, you gonna take notes?
Because we got a paper party.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, all right, so our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 19 now, not September 12. Still at 1:30 PM. Okay, so, Commissioners, if there are no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Any objections? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.